Hello and welcome to a conversation with myself, Amber from the Grief Gang podcast. Today I'm going to have a lovely chat with two friends of mine and two inspirations of mine, Jack and Ben, the founders of the New Normal charity. Lads, hello, how are you?
Really
Well,
nice.
that lovely
It was much
inspiration.
nicer than I anticipated.
What can I say?
Thank you very much.
That's very kind.
I can be nice sometimes to you.
All the time, don't be so bad.
How are you feeling about today? Thank you for asking me to be the host of this wonderful conversation.
Not at all. I don't think that we know anyone else who had this time free, actually.
So we want to talk about all things the new normal today. We want to go from beginning to end and future. So, Jack, how did your dad die?
My dad, Dave Baxter, died of skin cancer when he was 48. He was a bodybuilder, so he loved sunbeds and he just used them too much, and he had a bit of bad luck, I suppose, and never caught it, and he died in 2013 when I was 22. Left me completely out in the cold on my own with a grief I didn't know what to do with. Really only needed my dad. It's the only person I couldn't have. And I kind of muddled my way through, I reckon I always forget, 3 or 4 years before I met this man to the left of me. And I'm not going to step on his toes and tell his story, but that encounter that we had in, I think, 2016 was massive. 2015? 2015.
That's saying something, considering this guy always forgets the year his dad died.
But he always remembers the year that he met me. That's special.
That's
isn't it?
stunning.
That's
It's
special.
stunning.
It's actually because, so we met 13 months before my dad passed away. So my dad, Steve, was diagnosed with a brain tumour in the early summer of 2015, which is shortly before, I think about 2 weeks before Jack actually came in to get a haircut with me in my barber shop on Portobello Road at the time. And yeah, my dad had a 13-month battle with cancer, and unfortunately he obviously didn't survive, and that's kind of how we've ended up 5 years later where we are.
I found Ben on Instagram by chance. No other way, just by chance. And I thought, oh, he's a trendy looking guy. Obviously a little bit older than me, but not much. He's got tattoos. He's wearing Dr. Martens. Probably on the same wavelength as me. I'm going to travel all the way from Essex to Portobello Road, which is exactly what I did for a £45 haircut, which is exactly what I did. Sat in his chair, did what I do with everyone, even to this day, and chatted to him about my life, which included the fact that my dad's dead. And when I said that, Ben said, oh, mate, my dad's dying. And that kind of set our friendship off on the right footing, I would say. Because I like talking to everyone about my dad, but not everyone understands. And that's, in essence, what we're about, isn't it? Is that understanding from one another, three of us here included, that what you're going through isn't as isolating as you think. So, yeah, that was the first step into our friendship.
Obviously, your dad had died, David died, and yours was dying.
Yeah.
And in that 13 months between, did you lean on Jack? Did you feel like, although he was younger, he was at a point where I've got the t-shirt, mate, come here. And did you, Jack, feel like you had to not guide Ben through, but you thought, I'm going to help my guy?
Before Ben speaks, I remember setting up the Dead Dad Club in my head and saying it out loud. And I remember when his dad died, him saying to me, I've just joined the Dead Dad Club. So that's my memory of that time. And beyond that, I don't really remember much else. You'll answer that better than I can.
I mean, Jack and I have a really great relationship where each of us has helped one another through difficult moments, whether that's to do with death or whether that's to do with other parts of our life, relationships and wherever else. We've both helped one another, and having Jack at that point in my life was really important to me. Jack was always there for me whenever I needed him, and not necessarily, and this is one of the really big things I think as well that's important about helping one another, is not always giving advice. He was just there to listen to me. And I could sit and say something to him and go, yeah, I get it, mate. And that's what I needed probably more than anything at that point in time.
I was having a bad time, just in general, with my mental health, not just the fact my dad wasn't here, just lots of things combining. And I had a what I would consider a mental breakdown in January 2018. And my lovely mum, who we all love and adore, Gloria Gaynor-Baxter, she said to me, look, enough's enough. I found this anxiety retreat, and it sounds a little bit left field, but it really worked for me. And we had this residential, me and her, with some really wonderful people, and they empowered me into you know, owning me and who I am and why I am and what I am. So, you know, I still live with anxiety, but I'm proud of that. And what I was able to do in those 3-4 days was recognise that holding space with Ben is something that helps me. So I said to him over burgers in Hoxton, just around here, I was like, look, let's do something. I didn't think it was a charity, I didn't know what it was, but let's have a conversation. You and I speak so much about our dads, there must be other people in this world that want to do the same. And initially I was like, I want to take this conversation to the hospice that cared for my dad. And Ben went, good idea, but let's go bigger, let's take it into London. And that's exactly what we did. We took our conversation, we didn't know what it was at that point, aside from the fact that I went, let's call it good grief. And he was like, yeah, that's not a bad shout.
Do.
Yeah, it's not a bad shout. You know, let's take these good grief sessions into London and see what happens.
Well, I don't even think that they were good grief sessions. It was just let's
just
you know, let's put something on. And
we didn't know what it was, did we? Let's be honest.
No, we had no idea.
The best thing start.
I remember putting the post out, and we said that, and it was as simple as we always speak to one another about the people that we've lost. You know, and we want to do that for other people as well. We want to bring people together in a room. It was that straightforward. And we sat in that room, and Jack didn't stop talking.
2 hours of me just...
That's dreamy,
honestly.
that's dreamy.
Well, do you know what it was? It was like taking the muzzle off a dog. I was like, oh my God.
It's when you give permission, when you've been given permission to go, that feeling and those topics that you not, or normally felt by society to be like, don't talk about that. When you're amongst 5 or 6 other people who go, no, you're sweet, you can do that. It's word vomit.
I felt alive. I remember to this day how I remember vividly, I don't think I'll ever forget that liberating feeling of like, this is our space for us to talk about our people. And but still so proud of my dad and everything he was to me and everything I was to him. And I was just given that permission to let loose. And I didn't have the prior knowledge because we didn't know what it was. And I did talk a lot in that first meeting. But it helped, and it's been helping for 3 years ever since.
That adrenaline that you get from the conversations that you had in that room is incredible. You're filled with so many different emotions, you know, and I felt really elated.
I would say as well, I think to our credit, and I wouldn't necessarily say that this was on purpose, more that I think we'd found something good from the get-go, is that the style has never really changed. Like, it just hasn't.
It hasn't from meeting one.
Aside from the fact that I talk a lot less.
Essentially, it would be a 2-hour meeting, sit down in a room. I think the most we had, in fact, actually, this was a big turning point for us, but about 21 turn up to an in-person meeting, and we thought we need to do more. And we started going to 2 a month. And it was around about, I would say it was probably around about the 2 a month mark, which was about a year in, that we really started to find our feet. You know, topics of conversation were slightly easier to come by. And also as well, you know, people were coming back a little bit more regularly, so they were also finding their feet and finding their confidence in talking. At the end of 2019, we had a conversation. And we said throughout January and February, which is our busiest time of the year, because, you know, people are more inclined to sort of come along at that time.
It's reflective time,
So we said, right, we're going to go to weekly. So we changed from the beginning of 2020 to weekly meetings in person. And then obviously we met you.
I made the video for you to say you're going weekly.
You did.
And what a moment that was.
Wow.
Very exciting.
And
that was pre-COVID.
That was pre-COVID. And I'll just speak very briefly of my experience of coming to Good Grief. And obviously I met you both on more of me interviewing you for my podcast.
Brilliant podcast, by the way.
Obviously.
The Grief Gang.
Come on.
The best podcast ever.
Lovely little plug there.
Well, I'm just speaking as a fan.
A doted fan. But I reached out to you guys and we got a date in the diary and I come down and we recorded. And I think we went way over time. We spoke for hours. We spoke for a good old while. A good while.
It's great, that.
And it got to about 6:30. And I remember, Jack, you said, we actually have a session tonight. Stick around. And I went, do you know what? Cool, yeah, I've got
nothing better to do.
Yeah, literally, I've got nothing better to do, so I'll stay. And I did. And I remember I wasn't really, not in the mindset, but I just sat down in this room and there was about, how many in that one?
Probably about 12.
About 12,
There's a good amount in that, I remember.
And I remember, in that moment, up to that point, I felt very comfortable with my story and talking about my mum and speaking about my story. And then as we went around the room and we were speaking, and I said, hi, I'm Amber, I'm here to remember my mum, Sue. And I said it, and I'll never forget it, and I'm not going to go into name whatever, but I remember it went to one person, and she said her name, and she couldn't get out her loved one's name. I remember that. Gets emotional now. It destroyed me because I thought spaces like this are so necessary for people like her, and even people like me who are comfortable and doing the work that I do. I'm comfortable with it, but Amber, you have to remember that there are people who still struggle and are not as where you are, and spaces like this are necessary. And as that hour went on, and we spoke about so many different things, and the debate and like the healthy conversation, I remember just sitting there and it was a little bit out of body, and I was like, this is wicked. This is absolutely wicked. And I said to myself, I'm coming back. I'm absolutely coming back. And then a pandemic.
She never did. She never did come back. She came to that one in-person meeting.
More than that, I've never left. I've never left, have I?
As we went into lockdown, the last meeting we hosted in person was our 40th meeting.
Yeah.
Which we thought was a huge deal.
Yeah.
Little did we know what was about to happen.
We'll speak about that. So so you're used to now weekly Devonshire Square every week. You've then now been thrown, obviously, as we all with the pandemic, going, okay, we need to shake things up. How are we still going to provide support to these people? We can't see them in person.
So we obviously immediately, Jack and I spoke. We had the conversation as well with James, who James is the third founder, who is very much behind the scenes. But we had the conversation between the three of us, and we thought we don't know how long this is going to go on for. And we still need to support the people that need the support of our charity, especially now.
I think I was on the first test one. The test one.
But we did a test call, and I remember, because I wasn't very well, I had COVID, and it was the first Monday that we'd gone into lockdown. We did a test call, and after that test call, we posted straight away on Instagram, said that we were going to be doing virtual calls from the following Monday. And initially, we thought we'll do one call, and we posted about it, and then we had about 50 people sign up. Yeah. So we had to split into two calls, and that's how Group A and Group B, so Good Grief, Virtual Good Grief, Group A and Group B, we started, 2 calls every single Monday at the beginning of the pandemic. And initially, we had no idea how this was going to go on, like anyone. Yeah. But it kept going, and people kept turning up. And the calls looked very much the same as they did in person. I really liked them from the beginning. I felt that they were a really good way for people who maybe didn't feel as comfortable being in that space. They could turn up, they could listen, they could switch their camera off. They didn't have to add anything. And also sort of a really lovely thing that I like about virtual meetings is that people can have conversations and they can share their stories in the chat function without actually having to speak out. Yeah. So they can find their confidence and they can find their voice through that. And
it's almost a separate conversation, isn't it? And I think as well, massively, and this is something that we must appreciate about virtual calls, is that when we took them online, we assumed we'd get someone from Newcastle or someone from Manchester that wasn't able to come to the in-persons in Devonshire Square in East London. And we did, but we also got someone from Paris. Yeah. And we've since had people from Bermuda and Sri Lanka and Australia, and we have hosts in the States. And it's, that to us really is the value in what we're doing right now, is that we are reaching all 4 corners of the globe, and it's amazing.
Believe it or not, I did take a bit of time to warm up and actually talk in a session properly. But I was one of those people. I did kind of feel probably 1 or 2 times, stay quiet, and then I was like, I've got something to say, and I want to say it in this group. And I've never shut up since.
And we're so thankful for that.
But I now see it now with new people who attend, and I watch them, they come and their cameras are off, or they stay muted for a while, and I'll keep coming back, and as time, they'll be like, actually, can I say something? Can I add? Yeah. And it's just wonderful to see people flourish in such a safe environment.
Yeah. What I think is really beautiful as well is the journey, obviously, that you're speaking about, but that's, the next step of that journey is we have people who came to those initial virtual meetings with their cameras off, who are now hosts. Yeah, that
evolution is insane. There's so many more branches and groups on the side. Do you reckon if I put you on the spot, you remember more of them? I'm joking.
I
I was going to put you on the spot and ask how many hosts do you have. Would you?
Can you do it in order of
Yeah.
the meetings that we added? I mean, I know that I
You
can.
know, the number one was.
Yeah, well, that's it. Straight away, we launched Black and Brown
Yeah.
with Amber Jeffrey.
Mhm.
That was an incredible place for us all to be
Yeah.
together, and we were so
That
proud to have
conversation
watched
was,
you
yeah.
flourish and you create that space for people that needed that so desperately, and that was first. So it's really quite hard to believe that just over a year ago we had one meeting.
I know.
That's
Yeah.
you don't really see it and
On a
think about that a
Monday.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we've got Black and Brown Good Grief, which came first. Then we had Group C,
Yeah.
so it's still a Good Grief session.
Mhm.
Group C, so we added another Good Grief, so that's 4 meetings.
Yeah.
Then we added,
Queer Good Grief.
no, it's
Oh,
complicated.
look
was
at
next.
him. Look, he knows him, but he won't help out.
It's complicated was next. It's
Yes.
complicated is
Okay,
is
so that's
a Good Grief session, and that's for complicated grief. It's for people that have lost people through suicide or addiction or strained relationships. Then we added Queer Good Grief.
No, then we added Boys Talk.
Then we added Boys Talk,
Keep
which is
up, guys.
which is it's a men's mental health peer-to-peer support group, much the same format as Good Grief.
Yes.
Then we added
Then
Queer
it
Good
was the
Grief,
break Queer
yeah.
Good Grief.
Queer Good Grief is a good grief session for the queer community.
Yeah.
Then we added
Girls Talk.
Girls Talk, which is the girls' mental health group.
Yeah.
And then we added this month Lockdown Loss, which is a group specifically for for people that have lost their people during the pandemic. But also
That's
we run
7 new groups.
we also run a
7
host
groups.
meeting,
7 new groups.
and we run a host meeting once a
Yeah,
month
so
as
yeah,
well.
and our host meeting for us guys, yeah.
Yeah, so essentially we have 7 meetings, 7 different meetings that people can attend.
Mhm.
A range of different meetings for lots of different types of grief and for lots of different communities as well, because we recognise that there's, sometimes people aren't as comfortable sitting in certain rooms and
Yeah.
sitting around certain people having conversations.
Yeah.
Sometimes, they want to be in a space where they feel more represented.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really important for us
Yeah.
to make sure that people feel represented, to make sure that they feel safe. I mean, now we run 23 meetings a month.
Mm.
So we've gone from the beginning of the pandemic, 4 meetings a month in March 2020, to April 2021, we ran 23 meetings. We've hosted over 200 meetings, so from 40 to over 200. We've met nearly 1,000 young people from around the world. And it's not just young people now as well. We have people of all ages, or adults of all ages, coming into Boys Talk and Girls Talk and the other space as well. And it's a really incredible trajectory over a 12-month period, which we could never have imagined.
Yeah.
We were excited that you had come from nearly Brighton. And as Jack touched on earlier, we now have a host who lives in Las Vegas.
It takes me back to meeting number 1
Yeah.
in the community centre in Angel, like not knowing what to expect. And there's an element of that from the get-go. We listen, we hear, we understand to a point. We just want to make sure everyone's heard. That's bottom line to what we do.
Our meetings are completely free. They will remain completely free. They are peer-to-peer. They are for people with shared experiences to come together, to speak openly and honestly, to communicate with one another, and to empower one another. And they'll continue to do that. And as Jack says, 23 meetings is the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
When we know that people in every single corner that we can reach are supported, well, then we'll keep going.
As much as we're co-founders, I'm very much a big attendee and supporter of this format, peer-to-peer.
Yeah.
I've had all sorts of therapy and anxiety retreats. This is the thing that's worked the most. This is the thing
This is one that's stuck.
it works.
For me, I mean, my dad's life meant everything to me. Now his death means just as much. And, that for me is the driving force here, is that hopefully long after I die, people will still, I don't want them to talk about me, I want them to talk about him.
Yeah.
I want them to know the reason they're there is because of Steve May, because of a guy who laid 1,000 bricks a day, who was strong as an ox and could dance.
Yeah.
And I want people to know that.
As someone that hosts our meetings,
Yeah.
what do those spaces mean to you?
Words are quite feeble, and it's when you go from attendee to host, you might think, oh, but no, I come in as attendee. And even as most recently on Thursday with our black and brown group. I attended, and there's something about when you get to a place when you know you can say something and you can fully say, I don't want an answer back, I just want to share this with you. And I shared it with the group, and I cried and I cried and I cried. And half me expected to, I don't know, I just cried and I cried, and I felt so safe. The room was silent, but it wasn't awkward silence. It literally felt that it was virtual. I was being hugged from these attendees. And I cried and I cried. And they said, thank you. I said, thank you for doing that with me, Amber. Thank you for being vulnerable with me. And I said, thank you. Thank you for letting me. So having spaces to do that, as much as I'm strong and I'm vulnerable. And having a space where I can be both and I can lean into both of those is absolutely wonderful for me. The friends that I've made for life from them, I'd be lost without it, and long may it continue. And I'm very proud of you both, and I'm very proud to be a part of it as well.
Well, we echo that right back. Very proud of you, and thanks for helping us today and asking us these questions.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, whoever is watching. I hope that has answered all your questions for the New Normal charity. I've been your host, Amber Jeffrey, and this is Jack Baxter and Benjamin May, TNN founders.
Nice one, AJ. Thank you very much.